This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Hi, curious minds out there in our ever-expanding radio land. Welcome to CC with BB, Connecting with Coincidence with Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD. That's me. This is the only radio show in the world dedicated to the study of coincidences, synchronicity, and serendipity. We are coming to you through the X-Zone Broadcast Network located in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, and broadcasting all over our world. What is the relationship between mind and brain? Does the brain produce consciousness, or does the greater consciousness produce the brain? How do mind and brain interact with each other? I'm a psychiatrist. I study this question in my office. I help people with medications and psychotherapy. I work in both brain and mind. You need your mind to recognize a coincidence and your brain to talk about it. Coincidences are like messages in a bottle. The message can be about you, and the message can be about where the bottle and message came from, that infinite sea of possibilities. Coincidences sometimes point us towards previously unrecognized causal connections. They teach us about hidden potentials within us like telepathy and human GPS, our ability to get places we need to go without knowing how we got there. They tell us about other intelligences that may be influencing our lives, and they sometimes trick us. The phrase, connecting with coincidence, is my coincidence brand. It is the name of my book, my Psychology Today blog, my website, and my social media sites. To find any and all of them, please put Connecting with Coincidence in your search engine. Would you like to know how sensitive to coincidences you are? Take the Weird Coincidence Survey on my website. Hiring new people can be a chancy adventure. As head of psychiatry at the University of Missouri-Columbia, I had to find and hire new faculty members. The usual process involved advertising in psychiatric newspapers and making phone calls to colleagues in other cities. My method was different. Most of the faculty I hired just showed up. I relied on serendipity for them to join us. There were 5 women whose collective stories were particularly striking. Soon after accepting the position on the faculty, each of the 5 became pregnant. The second, third, and fourth each had twins. The 5th had been trying to get pregnant for several years. She too got pregnant soon after being hired. But unlike the other 3, she didn't have twins. When women of childbearing age find satisfying work, they become more relaxed and more able to conceive children, so having a new job can increase the likelihood of becoming pregnant. The string of twins that occurred here became more surprising, however. To follow a basketball analogy, in a single game, when a player reaches double digits in points, assists, and rebounds, it's called a triple-double. My department scored a triple-double, 3 women with twins. The first woman who had a single baby stayed for a few years, then took a job that paid twice as much in a warmer climate. Her departure represented a loss of the department's investment in her. The 5th woman joyfully raised her single child with us for less than 2 years because her husband then found a better job elsewhere. The families of the triple-double stayed. 2 of the 3 women divorced their husbands and went on to make outstanding contributions to the department, as did the 3rd woman who didn't divorce. The serial coincidence in this super fertile environment of our department helped achieve the desired longevity of 3 excellent faculty members. People with reciprocal needs found each other. These women needed a safe, comfortable nest for their planned families, and our department needed helpful, committed faculty members. The 3 sets of twins sealed each deal. The 3 women with twins put down their roots and stayed for now close to 20 years. This is to introduce the idea of leadership and synchronicity, because our guest today is Philip Merry, who currently lives in Singapore. He is an author, speaker, coach, and trainer who has conducted leadership projects in 58 countries over 36 years. His Philip Merry consulting group, called Leading with the Heart, helps today's global organizations to empower their people to live lives of significance. He is the author of Search for Singapore's Happiest People and a certified family therapist and marriage counselor. Philip was once a London taxi driver. And what I think Philip might not know is that research about the hippocampi of London taxi drivers has shown that certain areas of their hippocampi are larger than normal. And the reason for this looks like it has something to do with being able to find their ways in the very confusing streets of London, because many of those streets were old cattle trails that then became streets, so they're confusing and hard to make sense of. The hippocampus area that was enlarged had something to do with being able to map areas of the world around them, and these hippocampi of taxi drivers were developed to manage, I think, the confusing terrain. We will talk with Philip about the confusing terrain of synchronicity in organizations in our next segment after a short break.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Welcome to CC with BB. Connecting with Coincidence with Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, the only radio show in the world focused on synchronicity, coincidence, and serendipity. And we are so delighted to have Philip Merry on our program today, because Philip Merry takes the idea of synchronicity to a different level, literally a different organizational level. He uses synchronicity to help leaders and organizations develop themselves. And Philip, after all these years, how did you get into the idea of doing a PhD in synchronicity, and who's going to give you a PhD in synchronicity, and why?
Okay. Well, I got into synchronicity simply because, like you, Bernard, lots of synchronicities happened in my life. Maybe not as dramatic as the one with you and your father, but similar. And so I experienced it myself, and I've been a leadership consultant and trainer for 37 years. I was a marriage counselor before that and family therapist. And over those 37 years in leadership, I began, as I experienced synchronicity myself, I began to wonder whether some of the people that I worked with, the leaders and the teams, had also experienced synchronicity. And when I chatted to them, I found that they had. But, and here's the rub, they didn't like to talk about it. And so I then began to research, the leadership literature, and there is very little written on synchronicity in the leadership field. And so I thought, number one, I'm committed to explore this personally, but I want to actually look at what it's all about as to why we don't see more of synchronicity in the leadership field. So that's how I got into it.
Joseph Jaworski wrote a book about leadership and synchronicity. I'm sure you've seen that, or have you?
That was one of the books that really got me going.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I actually am in correspondence with Joseph, and he's been very supportive of the PhD. And he and I, we're going to do look at how we grow together with the research that I've done and the tremendous book. He wrote a second book called Source, and Synchronicity, the first book, and then the second book, Source, I think are two definitive books on leadership in organizations.
And I in that book, just parenthetically, in the first one, that's the only one I've seen, there wasn't as much about synchronicity as I thought there would be, as the title suggested, but it certainly was scattered around in there. And I'm assuming that since that book and you're talking with him, he too is seeing more synchronicity activity in organizations like as you are.
I think he is. Now, it's interesting you say you didn't see much synchronicity. I think the whole book is about synchronicity, in the sense that it was a life story guided by synchronicity. Now, that doesn't mean that synchronicity happened on every page, but 4 or 5 or maybe more times in his life story in the book, synchronistic things happened to him that guided him in the way that he was supposed to go. So to me, it's about a life story and a leadership life story that is prompted by synchronicity or nudged by synchronicity, as some people
that's a good way of thinking about it. I read it maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I can look at it a little differently. My favorite story in there is when he was walking down, when he was in an airport and he saw a woman and said, "Are you married?" And I think her name was Mavis, and now they're married. And that is striking. It's that ability to pick up something about someone else and act on it. That is a coincidence prototype that I read in lots of other places. It was very dramatic the way Joseph wrote about that.
And you're absolutely right. And the interesting thing about that, Bernard, is that it's also guided by intuition. So he was actually on an escalator going one way and she was going the other. And as they passed each other, he had this feeling as their eyes met. And he was with his son, actually, at the time. And so he dropped his bag and said to his son, "Look after that." And they raced to the place where she was actually getting on another flight. And they just hit it off. She had the same feeling as he had. So to me, that's the story of how intuition and synchronicity are so intertwined.
Oh, they are. I think synchronicity experiences are making us have to develop our intuitive capacities in a better way, in more refined ways, to know which internal voices we should be responding to and which ones we should ignore.
Yeah.
Well, so after that wonderful aside, tell us what some of the things that the leaders you talk with told you. And first, I'm guessing the reason they didn't want to talk about it is because they thought they might be seen as crazy.
Well, absolutely spot on. I mean, that's my summation, that they thought they were crazy. Now, first of all, I actually studied 2 groups. So when I began the PhD, I said I need a group interview with a group of people talking about it, and then individual interviews. And the first group I looked at was a group of international women working for an aid agency in Ethiopia. And they looked at the factors that facilitate synchronicity. So that was my initial thought, to say, if I can get some insight into what it is that causes synchronicity, then that would be a good PhD.
Did I understand you correctly that there's a group trying to look at the methods by which synchronicity can be increased?
Yeah, this was a leadership program. It's a women's leadership program. And as part of my 9-month program, my wife and I ran this program with them on women's leadership. And in one of the modules, I was looking for a group to study for my PhD. And these women had actually done and talked about some very interesting findings that they'd had. So I said, why don't I research using this group? And so in the last
just to be specific, I find this so intriguing that before you knew it, these women were gathering together to look at synchronicity and other things in organizations.
No.
Oh, okay.
It was a women's leadership program that my wife and I were conducting for this agency. And as it was a 12-month program, so one 5-day module first and then a 4-day module at the end. And we got talking to them. They knew I was doing synchronicity for my PhD. And then when I thought about, now, which group do I look at to study or research synchronicity, it occurred to me that the women were a perfect group. And so I got them together and said, what are all of them experience synchronicity? There's a group of 18 women. And I got them to identify the factors that facilitates synchronicity.
Great. I mean, that's beautiful. I want to know more about what you found there as you see fit to tell us.
Well, let me tell you the whole story, because then what happened, because that's what I was just going to study. What are the factors that facilitate synchronicity?
Okay.
But they got into, in their answers, they got into so many things around the definition of synchronicity, the process of synchronicity, what synchronicity was all about, that when I came to the second part of my research, my second group, which was a group of 7 individual leaders, I expanded the research to look at the whole gamut of synchronicity in terms of definition, process, facilitation, how it happens. And I focused on the stories of synchronicity with 7 individual leaders. And what you asked me, Bernard, what I found about why they don't talk about it, they were scared of looking stupid in the eyes of their colleagues. And the more I researched this, both talking to them and also the variety of people who've written about quantum physics, about spirituality and leadership, etc., what I found was that the Newtonian mindset, the Isaac Newton mindset, the mechanistic mindset, that is the linear mindset, that is A plus 1 plus 2 equals 3, etc., that was the mindset and the paradigm in both leadership university degrees and in leadership corporations. And so people are afraid of speaking out about any way that they make decisions which are different to the logical, rational way.
Got you. Yes.
A quick story about that. One CEO I interviewed in Thailand, he said, "Philip, can I talk to you privately?" I said, "Yeah, sure." He said, "I make all my decisions using my intuition, but please don't tell my staff." Because they would think that he's not such a good leader if he uses things like synchronicity, like intuition, like coincidence to help him in his leadership decision making.
The more complex the decision-making process, I think, the more good leaders must rely on intuition and related ideas.
Well, and that's absolutely true, you see, because I only studied 18 women leaders, international leaders, and then 7 individual leaders. All of them said exactly the same thing. A lot of the decisions I make, they say, are made with my heart, with my intuition, and are guided by synchronicity. And they said that's why they are so good. So what I'm doing, and I've just finished after 8 years of doing my PhD.
Wow.
It's a long trip for a variety of reasons, which I may go into. But what I'm now doing is saying to people and pushing at an open door, actually, in some cases, how do we now begin to validate the use of intuition, the use of heart-based decisions, and the use of synchronicity-based decisions in the organizational context?
That's great. That's great. That's great. What I'm surprised about is that these leaders also included synchronicity in addition to intuition in their decision, in their understanding of their decision making. That's the new idea to me. Intuition has a lot of different meanings, but synchronicity gets a little bit more precise. And here they were able to label it and tell you about it. I find that wonderfully astounding.
Yeah, they were pretty open. I mean, the interesting thing, and I'm sure, Bernard, you found this very strongly in your wonderful research, is that once people are behind closed doors, they really want to spill the beans.
They do.
How they really live their life, how they really operate as a leader. And the thing that keeps synchronicity going, again, masses of research around all sorts of people that I'm sure you've read, but the thing that keeps synchronicity going against all the skeptics is the story. And when you tell the story, so I began with these leaders, getting them to tell their stories. I mean, one story for me, for example, I was making a decision about getting married, and I was 40, so I got married late in my life because I was waiting for the one. And I went to a personal growth seminar where the songs of John Denver were played, the deeper spiritual songs of John Denver. And that really helped me decide, yeah, I'm going to get married to this particular woman. And it pushed me over the edge to make that decision. And on a Friday evening here in Singapore, I was saying, I like to say thank you to John Denver. How the heck do I do that?
We're going to answer that question in our next segment, Philip.
Okay.
How to say thank you to John Denver, and we will be back after a short break.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back to CC with BB with our guest today, Philip Mary, an organization consultant very much interested in studying and using synchronicity in organizational leadership. You were telling us about you wanted to say thank you to John Denver because he inspired you to ask the woman of your life to marry you. How did you make connection with him, Philip?
Well, I'll just make this a quick story. Friday evening, how do I say thank you to John Denver? Saturday morning, I opened the newspaper. Guess what it said? John Denver, Singapore next week.
Good.
The Saturday afternoon, I got a call from the hotel where he was staying, and this woman who knew my friend said, I hear you want to get hold of John Denver. Send me a message, and I'll try and get it to him. She had the fax in her hand at the hotel. She said, how do I get hold of John Denver? The lift opened. There was John Denver. John Denver called me on a Sunday evening in response to my letter. Now, Friday evening, I want to say thank you to John Denver. 48 hours later, he spoke to me.
Wonderful, wonderful, and that's paradigmatic of some of your leadership stories. I would like to have a leadership story from you, from one of the people that you've talked with, and then find out what the women's leadership group how they informed you about factors increasing synchronicity in organizations.
Not a problem. There are many 4 or 5 leadership stories. So these are from the 7 individual leaders. And I just asked them to talk about synchronicity and how it had impacted them in their journey. One specific guy, it's a specific story. He said, I'm not happy. It was a facilities manager for a big organization. He said, I'm really not happy in my current role. I need to move, and I need to get more joy in my life. That was 2:00 one afternoon in San Francisco. He went from his meditation, having decided that, to look at the computer. There was a job. He looked at the job. He said, this looks interesting to me. Within 20 minutes, he'd called them. Within an hour, he was at their office having the interview, and then he got the job. Now, remember, he said, I just need more joy in my life. Guess what the name of the company was that he joined? Joie de vivre.
So he got more joy in his life. Now that story is not about leadership. It's about finding a job for an individual, of which I have plenty of stories. Something like that. But I'm talking about within organizational decision making.
So I'm just premising that to say this was the sort of guy he was. He talks about leadership with his staff. He makes decisions with his staff. When they have a decision to make in his team, he's head of a team, he actually asks them to notice unusual things that have happened during the week. And then they get together and share those stories and together decide where synchronicity is taking them in terms of which decisions they should make based on the unusual stories.
Now, that might be a complicated thing for you to tell us a story about, but can you do that? That's really a group synchronicity awareness thing, which I think is wonderful. I haven't to people. It's almost like people sitting around telling dreams and seeing where the organization, the group is going to.
It's just that this guy is. Everybody knows. I mean, this is a larger-than-life guy. He's a great guy, and he's now a great personal friend. This is a guy who makes no secret of his belief in synchronicity and spirituality. And so everybody loves him for that and knows him for that. And so when he says to them, we have a decision to make, they are comfortable to follow his lead in terms of sharing stories to help them make a decision. So I don't have a specific story that enabled to happen, but it actually is the way that he operates as a leader, and people accept him as a leader because of that.
That's great. I would have liked to have done that when I was head of psychiatry, but I didn't have the tools to be able to do it then. That's so inspiring.
I have another dramatic one if you'd like, Bernard.
Is it organizational?
Yes. These are all from the leaders that I.
Please do.
This guy was interested in launching a product. He's an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, and he had a product that he wanted to launch but couldn't find financial backers. He went to an Asian country, I can't tell you which one, and took advice about how you get in touch with answers from beyond, as he liked to call it. And he went to this place which is a spiritual place, and had a dream that he went into a pub and saw a guy who came into the pub looked just like Father Christmas, was an American guy, and they talked to each other, and it was a great conversation. End of dream. He then has to go to Chicago to pursue financing for his new product. And he met a guy at a conference who said, you should come and talk to my CEO. He goes to talk to the CEO. The CEO wasn't there, began his presentation. Halfway through the presentation, the CEO walks in, exactly the same guy that he's seen in his dream in Asia. The CEO ends up being the guy who funded all of his research and product launch.
That's I would call a precognitive dream.
Yeah.
With some oomph in it.
Okay.
That's a good story. That's a good story. I'm most interested in the organizational part of this. The story of stories, when we have a decision to make and people talk about weird things that have happened this week. That's an organizational synchronicity. This was still pretty much a one-on-one thing where a guy was looking for something and had an anticipation of what the other person who might give it to him will look like. So it's still close to a lot of the stories that I have. It's almost like I think there are synchronicities for organizations as a whole, that an organization somehow runs into something that's a parallel to what the organization needs to be doing or thinking about, or helps the organization move ahead somehow.
Well, my stories are from individual leaders, Bernard. So I don't have yet. I'm still now gathering other stories for my next project, but I don't have the big organizational stories. I've got stories of individual leaders who use synchronicity.
Yeah.
And the benefits to them reported, were benefits to them as leaders, benefits to the business,
yes,
and benefits to the team. So
yes,
they talked in broad sense of, from the things that they'd experienced, that synchronicity brings resources and results. One guy said synchronicity and the focus brings spirit to the corporate world. It helps you understand the bigger picture of a situation. And this came up a great deal for me, Bernard, for the interviews I did. So many people, in fact, all the people said, the biggest benefit of synchronicity as a leader was that it indicated they were on the right path in decisions that they were taking.
That is perhaps the most common use of synchronicity, the affirmation, confirmation of a path that I am on.
Yes, and that was particularly related to projects that they were completing for the organization. And that was to do, as a leader, with their recruitment of people. It was to do with whether they should invest in a particular country.
As you were saying, Philip.
Yeah, so the organizational issues around where synchronicity helped was around investments, whether to start up in a particular country or not, whether to start a particular new product, what cities to launch a new product in, and a variety of things that individual leaders talked about were the benefits. And in the research that I did, this is just literally, Bernard, taking down what people said, the leaders I interviewed, how synchronicity had helped them. And as I think I talked about, it helped them as leaders, it benefited their business, and it benefited their team. So I broke it down into those three areas. And the broad areas for benefit to the organizational business was being able to attract resources and results, being able to look at the big picture, and indicating that they were on the right path. I think you've experienced that in your own research, that a big issue around synchronicity on a personal basis is saying they're on the right path. Yes. But a big benefit for organizational leaders is when they're involved in a project and a particular thing turns up, then it's a confirmation for them that that project is being rolled out in the way that it should be rolled out.
Do you have a story that's a confirming story, Philip?
Around a project, you mean?
Yes.
Well, there's a particular project of a person who wanted to know about a line of business to go into. And she was looking for a partner to be a part of that business. and she didn't know where to find that person. She'd been sick, and she just happened to turn up at a meeting. And at that meeting, she said she didn't feel very good because she hadn't put her makeup on and she dressed frumpily, she said, but she turned up at the meeting. But because she was not feeling so good, the way she introduced herself was very short and to the point. And it just so happened that the business partner that she attracted was sitting next to her, and he liked what she said because she was so short. She didn't stand on ceremony, and as a result of that, she got her partner for the new business.
Nice.
And it was interesting for me, and this is, you found this many times, I'm sure, Bernard. There are big stories of synchronicity, like, my John Denver story or whatever. But it's interesting to me how very often very small, precise things fall into place. So had this woman been her normal, healthy self, she would have dressed smartly and spent a lot of time on her introduction. But because she was sick and had been sick, she was very brief and curt in her reply, which is exactly what appealed to the business partner she ended up with.
Who was sitting right next to her.
Yeah.
I like those random, I'll say random seat assignments. I like to pay a lot of attention to them because I see that at least some people see certain kinds of coincidences, certain categories of coincidences. A guy named Gary Schwartz sees serial coincidences all the time. That's his thing. Sees a bunch of different rabbits or dogs or something. I see
in front of me.
Pardon me?
I have super synchronicities sitting in front of me.
Good.
The other story that may help, Bernard, I mean, again, it's a personal story, but I was growing and developing organizationally the whole focus on happiness and stress.
Yes.
Because I knew that was a project that a lot of my leaders here in Asia needed. And I said, I want to have a major project starting with a conference on stress and happiness. And then somebody said to me, well, the person you need is Martin Seligman.
And we're going to, in the next segment, we are going to find out about how you and Martin Seligman got together. We'll be back after a short break.
All right.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Oh, welcome back to CC with BB. Our guest today, Philip Mary, and we are merrily wandering around in the synchronicity vault of his mind and organizations. This is great. Philip, you were telling me about Happiness Conference and the need to find Martin Seligman, the founder of Positive Psychology. How'd you find him?
Well, absolutely. And the other thing to remember is this answered, I think, a country national need and an organizational need in leadership. So on the Tuesday, I remember it very clearly here in Singapore. I've lived here for 27 years, but I said, I need to find Martin Seligman. How on earth do I find Martin Seligman? Wednesday, I had a meeting with an Australian business partner about another project. And he said, what's in your life at the moment? I explained I was looking for Martin Seligman. He said, he wrote stuff on a piece of paper and handed it to me and said, here is Martin Seligman's personal email and contacts. That was within 12 hours of me saying I needed that. Long story short, Martin came and was keynote speaker at our conference here in Singapore, Asia's first happiness conference, which had massive benefit, obviously, to the people at the conference, but sparked a whole range of subsequent happiness conferences that were of great benefit to leaders in Singapore, but also great benefit to Singapore itself. So that's kind of an organizational leadership story.
Oh, that is what I like about that, and it's similar to the guy in San Francisco who wanted to get joy in his life and went to his computer, and there he found joy in his life, the company with joie de vivre in its name. And here you put out a need, and rather than showing it up on a computer, which there are lots of stories of computers feeding information just when people need them, here you were able to have someone you were meeting be a live conveyor of information. And that's one of the most interesting things to me is how information gets to our minds when we need it.
Well, you see, I've gone on, I'm studying, although I've finished my PhD now, I'm still studying this because I'm using it in my work. And I don't know if you know the work of Raymond Bradley.
No.
He's looked at holographs in terms of how synchronicity works, but studied entrepreneurs. And so I now have this very clear issue way in my head. I'm 67 years old, 68 in December. And in my life now, I know that if I want something to happen, I very strongly imagine that I'm connecting already to that field where the thought for the organization and the leader already exists.
When you say connecting to that field, what's the field? Define the field a little better.
Well, I know from my study of quantum physics that the idea or the thought of what I'm trying to manifest either in my life or in my organization, it already exists. And what I do when I quiet my mind, and the Heart Math Institute has done a lot of work on this, when I quiet my mind and focus on what it is that I want, somehow I know I can connect with where that thought in the future already exists. And then I think what happens is that begins to manifest all around me in both big and small situations. Now, that's my belief, and what I'm studying at the moment, particularly through the work of Raymond Bradley, is how that happens at a scientific basis. And he's very clear that holographically, we can know what we want, and we can attract synchronistically those issues and events into our lives. And I'm busy making that an organizational leadership and team paradigm for how I work with teams.
There are contexts that you have that support the capacity that you just defined. What are those contexts? What do you have to have in your background? What do you have to have around you, in your mind and in your environment, to facilitate the actualization of the thought?
Well, that's interesting. I can talk from my perspective, but let me show you what my research turned up in terms of the facilitating factors. All of the people I talked to said within the context, let intuition be your guide. Don't push it away, know that it exists. Number two, be in the flow of now, to be very focused, which is why meditation helps, because it helps you to be grounded in the flow of now. They talked about seeking support outside of yourself, divine, spiritual, or whatever you connect that to be. They talked about, fourthly, asserting your intention. And fifthly, linked to what you just said, Bernard, a lot of them said that an enabling environment was really important.
And what's an enabling environment?
Well, interesting for them, a place, some said where music is being played, some said within nature, some said when you're stuck in a work situation with an idea that won't come or won't clarify or won't manifest, go out and walk in nature. And I had an amazing experience, well, not an amazing experience. One of the techniques that I use is what I call a synchronicity nature walk. I was in the mountains of Bhutan doing a team program for an organization that was closing down. And I got them all to do a 1 hour walking meditation. First of all, I said, get clear on the answer that you need to a particular difficult current question. And really, really get that clear, and then go out into nature. And this was beautiful, by a lake, by a river. We were camping for this seminar. And they literally all went out for an hour, didn't speak to anybody, and came back and shared the very clear answers that the environment, the natural environment had given them. Having said that, I've had the same results when people do a meditation walk in a city. So it's as if, Bernard, and again, I'm saying this to you, you know this already, you're the master of this, but I think that once we are clear, and I think what I've noticed, that if we are clear on a vision or a goal, which is, number one, of benefit to humanity, and number two, is somehow connected with your authentic self, the thing that you think you are supposed to be doing in this world, synchronicity seems to happen more strongly. And then the third thing, as you mentioned, enabling environment, and ask me another question, was that Bradley has found that these entrepreneurs are helped if their entrepreneurial team, their organizational team, does not have any conflict. He calls it where there is love, appreciation, and respect, that amplifies the signal, he says, which comes from source holographically. And if there is fear, anger, and resentment, that blocks the flow of synchronicity, the flow of intuition. So I'm busily exploring those types of things in the organizational work that I do.
That is wonderfully clear, Philip. And I want to be able to think about what you just said. They're close to what I know, different words. One of the things I am now working on is the idea of synchronicity or synchronicity awareness or coincidence awareness as a path to spiritual development. Mm-hmm. And what you've just described is the role of meditation in that path. I don't mean to say it's the only path, but I mean it's getting away from just sitting by yourself, but interacting with the world as well as sitting by yourself, to be able to interact with the world with your authentic self and being in the flow of now.
You know something? I don't know if you know much about the work of heart math.
I do. I know something about it, yes.
So I work with, I'm certified to run their programs, but they are a wonderful organization because their heart math breathing technique is amazing because it puts you into meditation with your eyes open and in the present moment.
Wow.
So what I love about what we're trying to develop here is you've no need to go to a monastery, you've no need to go away on a holiday to get clear. When you are as a leader in a team and you're in conflict with somebody, right there and then, if you do the heart math breathing techniques, and they've got some wonderful range of techniques, as you are having the conflict, you begin to do heart breathing, and that enables you to become what they call coherent, which allows the situation you're in to resolve. Now, I'm still trying to link all of that to synchronicity. But I do believe that we all as human beings somehow have this capacity to connect with a source which is separate from us, but also part of us, that enables miracles to happen.
Oh, yeah. I agree with that. I'm calling that source not something in the universe, but something that's around us, the psychosphere, our mental atmosphere. And in there is all kinds of potentials that connect us with ideas and people and feelings that we can do something with, and coincidence is one of the things we can do something with. We're coming to the end of our program, Philip, and
Can I give you a phrase, Bernard? It's quickly on my mind synchronistically. When you talk to Joe Jaworski, one of the most brilliant phrases he ever used was this: the role of the leader is to set the stage in organizations where miracles, synchronistic in nature, are more likely to happen. That's what he said is the role of the leader.
Thank you very, very much, Philip. I look forward to talking with you again.